Soldaten haben mir den Mut gegeben, dieses gigantische Werk zu beginnen. Sondern das kann ich sagen, den Mut habe ich nur gefasst, weil ich zwei Schichten kannte, den Bauer und den deutschen Arbeiter. Wie kann man unter Ihnen sein, der es mir nicht verzeihen kann, dass ich die marxistischen Parteien vernichtete? Aber mein Freund, ich habe die anderen genauso vernichtet. Sie sind
I was born in Poland, and we came to France before the war started in September of 1939. So we were already, my parents and I, we were already in Paris with my uncle. So we were safe. My mother took me back to Poland before the German invaded Poland to visit my grandparents, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to see them. I was only 5 years old, you know, to see my uncles, nieces, and all that beautiful family of 17 people. Suwałki was a small town on the Russian border. There were over, I would say, 2,500 Jewish families, all exterminated when the German invaded that town. They were all taken to Auschwitz and gone. 17 members of my family, all gone. My mother and I, when we lived in Paris, France, we were caught by the German as we were shopping, you know, in the street of Paris, in a roundup. You know, in those days they were trying to. They had lots of roundups. They were trying to catch as many Jews as they possibly could, find them, gypsies and other undesirable people that they wanted to send to the gas chambers. So we were caught. We were taken to the commandatur to be checked and so forth, blah, blah, blah. But then we were sent to a labor camp, not too far from Paris, about 2 hours away, okay, called Drancy. And my experience in that boxcar was just awful, terrible. First of all, we were packed like sardines. I don't know how many people can actually be in that boxcar comfortably. I don't know. But there were probably 100 of us. I couldn't move. My mother was actually lifting me up, holding me against her chest. And it's good that she was doing that, because you see what the German did. On top of us being so uncomfortable, they had put on the floor of the boxcar a coating about this thick of saltpeter. Now, saltpeter is a phosphate. It's a substance that is used for gunpowder, fertilizer, etc., etc. But when it's in contact with water, and it emanates fumes, it makes you sick. Your eyes water, you start to vomit, you get sick. When we arrived at the camp at Drancy, they dragged probably a dozen dead bodies that couldn't take it anymore. Mostly older people who couldn't breathe. So that's, that was pretty bad. Not only, it was an awful ride, and we were afraid, very afraid. And as bad as it was, I mean, I didn't tell you that, as a matter of fact, right next to me is a good example of that, because we were shot at by the British. I don't know if they were Brits or if they were French or some others, but there was a gentleman holding a child in his arm, and all of a sudden he falls, dead. The kid was safe, he was alive. He had been shot by a stray bullet. I mean, you know, things like that. People crying, yelling in desperation, asking them, praying. A lot of people were praying. There were lots of kids, young kids. It was a terrible sight. I had never seen such a thing. I had never seen a dead body in my life. And it's a good thing that my mother kept me up. She was aware. I mean, I tell you, that lady, she was unbelievable, unbelievable. A labor camp was a place where they would take the Jews and some other people to check them out, to make them work. There's no question about it. A labor camp, you worked from day to nightfall. But their tattoo your left arm and give you a number and forget about your name. They didn't do that. We didn't get to that stage because we were able to escape because of my mother's good head. So that's where they make it like a triage, we call it in French, that they sort you out. Jewish, gypsies, and maybe some other nationalities, you know. And you know what we had to eat, everything. They didn't give us anything to eat. It was mainly potatoes and warm water mixed. Don't ask me what they called it or whatever. And some other people used to tell us, I had lots of young kids, please eat whatever they give you because you have to stay alive. And we did. In spite of that, we had to. But the worst part was doing something that they made us do. You see, in a labor camp, they made us work very hard. And when you say us, especially older people, they would be outside, doing all kinds of chores that required a lot of strength, and they weren't able to perform. So they died. With lots of dead people on a weekly basis, people would die. So they would pile those dead bodies on the side of the camp, right outside. And sometime once a week, depending how many bodies were there, they would ask, and I don't even know why they asked the kids. My age, I was 9 and a half. Some of them were older. To take those bodies and to drag them outside and throw them in a big, huge hole that they had dug just for that purpose, to get rid of. You see, the Germans at that time wanted to hide. They wanted to kill as many Jews as possible and as fast as possible. They could never kill them as fast as they wanted to. It was awful. Can you imagine? I had never seen a dead body in my life, carrying a dead body, and throw it in a hole. And when the hole was filled with dead bodies, I'm assuming that they would cover it, and that was it. So that was our life in Drancy. My mother made the acquaintance of two young gentlemen from French. The camp had hired a French cleaning company outside of the camp to come in and out on a weekly basis to pick up the officers. The officers, I tell you one thing about the German, as much as I hate them the way they were at that time, to say that they were impeccable. They were really standing out. Their boots would be black. You could see yourself in their black boots, and they were just they look sharp. No question about that. So they had a cleaning plant that used to clean the uniform. So those two young men, my mother met them, and of course they were French, and we spoke French, so they became, a little acquainted. My mother bribed them. I'll tell you. I didn't even know that my mother had some diamonds, but she did have a few diamonds. And she offered them the diamonds, telling them, look, I've got a few diamonds in my hand here. They can be yours. They represent quite a bit of money. You can have them. Get me out of here fast. My son and I, but fast. See, my mother was very well aware that if we had stayed there longer, we would have been taken to Auschwitz, which is an extermination camp. She didn't want that to happen. So she was very, very, she did a good job. So they accepted. Money talks. And they were young people. So it was one night when I heard them coming they came to me first. And one of them put his hand on my mouth, and he told me, he said, look, don't say, the one thing that we want to ask you, don't make any noise. We are going to get you out of here. You're going to see your mother in a few minutes. We're going to take you and your mother out of the camp, and you'll be free. Don't make any noise. Promise me. Oh, you bet your life I promise. I say, yes. Oui. Je le ferai. Je vous jure, oui. And nothing else was said. So it was really a scene. They put me in a burlap bag. You wouldn't fit in one of those. But I did at that time, You know what a burlap bag, a potato sack is, burlap, about this big. They put me in one of those, and they carried me like a bunch of potatoes. I really didn't care. And I liked their voice also, that was reassuring. So, they picked me up and it's tough sometimes. Yeah, it's sometimes it's you. They got me out, and they went to the other barrack, and they got my mother, and they put my mother in the back of the truck also, small truck, and they got us out of the camp. So that's how we survived, at least that episode, that part. Because of my mother.
Ich meine, die Judenevakuierung, die Ausrottung des jüdischen Volkes. Es gehört zu den Dingen, die man leicht ausspricht. Das jüdische Volk wird ausgerottet. Das sagt Ihnen jede Parteigenosse. Ganz klar steht in unserem Programm drin, Ausschaltung der Juden, Ausrottung machen wir, Kleinigkeiten. Und dann kommen sie alle.
I stayed with about 5 different families for a period of over 2 years. But we're going to cover 2 families. The first one, we knew them very well, very, very well. We became good friends. And so this man who, and I told you, he drove me there from Issoudun, the small town where we lived, and he transported me in a small truck. And yes, he did transport me at first in a burlap bag, but then he put me in a wine barrel, and that wasn't very, very, very pretty bad experience. To this day, and I don't know if I told you that before when we spoke, that I always ask him. I say, Monsieur Tonnerre was his name, and I say, Monsieur Tonnerre, I didn't mind it so much that you put me in a wine barrel. I was already used to being mistreated and be carried with whatever it is. And you did the very best you could to help me. But why couldn't you have left some wine at the bottom of, leave some wine in the bottom of the barrel? made my trip a little more pleasant. Give me a little joy. I know I was 10 years old. For you, it may sound strange because in America, well, the 10-year-old don't drink wine. But you know, in France, I mean, I don't even know the color of milk. Yeah. I drank wine when I was probably 5 years old or 2 or 3 years old. I don't know. So he always laugh. I mean, we have a good time. He's still alive. I mean, Monsieur Tonnerre is still alive. He's probably going to be, I hope to see him this year when I go back to France. So it was very nice. So, you know, we traveled, and I think I mentioned that. We were stopped several times, but without going into great details, I stayed with the Bugeaud family, that was their name. Fine people, beautiful people. And they put me in an attic, a very small attic. I could hardly stand up in the attic, but I had to stay there all day long. I couldn't go outside because they were afraid that if, God forbid, I would be seen by neighbors. You know, in a small place, a small village, people start talking. Who is this kid? Who is it? They didn't want that to happen. So it's only at night that I would go out with Monsieur Bugeaud, the owner, and I would go in the wood. He would take me in the woods, and he would teach me how to shoot a rifle, how to catch wildlife like rabbits, pheasants, how to prepare to make a trap. It was very interesting. He taught me a lot. Survival, more or less, you know, in the woods. But that didn't happen too often, and we didn't stay out very late. So, but it was something that made me a little happier, I should say. I got accustomed to that life, except things did happen, such as we could hear sometimes a German convoy of troops that would be traveling, because we were located right in front of the main road. That wasn't so big, but anyway, it was the main road. And the German would always take that road and go wherever they were going, I don't know. But they would also stop where I stayed with these people, because it was a very quaint little spot, and they served very good food. And the German knew that. So they would stop and have a bite to eat and so forth and so on. We could hear them from far away. They were making so much noise. They had tanks, they had armored vehicles, etc. When that happened, we could hear them coming, and we knew that they were going to stop. Then the Bugeaud family didn't even want me to stay in the attic. So they put me in the old well. They had two wells, an old one and a new one. In those days, they didn't have any running water, so they used wells. And I had never been in the bottom of a well, let me tell you. That was an old one too. It was awful. It was scary, very scary. But I guess that was the safest place at the time. So I was placed in my feet in a bucket. It was, my feet were, when I was cold, I was trembling. It was dark. It was spooky. It was wet. I mean, you could see even the water running alongside the walls of this old well. It was creepy. There were all kinds of little critters, you know, critters crawling alongside. I think you call them here in the United States, we call them slugs, I think. They're like bloodsuckers, you know, something like that. They look like it, but they're bigger. I was holding on to the rope, scared, still thinking about my parents, still thinking about my friends, still, I don't know if I was even crying. I think I had already lost all the tears. They were gone. I was like numb, frozen. I was scared, just scared, almost 10 years old, and it was pretty bad, very bad. Sometimes I stayed in a well for, it depends. I waited until the German would leave. Then they would signal me to come up, or they would lift me up with a rope. But sometimes I would stay, I would say an hour, probably more sometimes. I don't really recall to tell you the truth. Those were awful moments, really. Very scary moments for a 9-year-old or for anyone for that matter. But these people were good for me. These people are really the heroes. They should. So many of them. And none of them are alive except one now. Why? Why did they do that? Lots of people did ask them. I wasn't the only one. I mean, there were hundreds of thousands of kids, my age, younger, older, who were also in hiding, and they asked themselves the same question. But there was one that came out of a Frenchman's mouth, and that was, it seemed that was the right thing to do at the time. That's right. So I guess that's why they did it. They did it because it was a good thing to do. I find it very hard to talk about that. Very hard. Good people. Oh my God, if they had been caught, you see, that's why I say, they were risking their lives. They were risking their property. I mean, the Germans killed lots of those people. And not only that, do you know, and I probably didn't mention, and I don't even think that I'm always mentioning it when I speak in front of a group, but in the streets, in the small villages, in the restaurants, outside, on the roads, anywhere, there were signs. It was said from the German, they used to put that, they used to advertise. And I'm paraphrasing, I'm just giving you an idea of what they said. They said that in French and in German, Achtung, and in French it would say something like this: whoever would be caught hiding a Jew would be severely persecuted or prosecuted. Yeah, they would kill them. I don't even think they were taking them into extermination camp, like Auschwitz and some others. They would just kill them on the spot. And some of them, I heard, they confiscated all of their property, and they just they threw them out from their farm, and took everything that they owned, the cattle, the horses, and everything that they had. So can you imagine yourself doing such a thing and taking that chance? It's unbelievable, unbelievable. Those people, like the family, I remember, I don't remember all of them. There were so many people involved in my life when I was at that age, like the Bugeaud family, the innkeepers, and then the Glomo family, the farmers. And there was another family called the Cacard. You see, that stays with you after, how many years it's been? I don't know, 60, 70 years already. And the Couderchon, that was another family. The others I don't even remember, and only one is left. We call them now, they call the just, the righteous, the righteous. We celebrate their memory. I will never forget these people. I did it on my own way. I mean, I wrote a lot about these people. I did the best I could. Because we don't want to forget that. We never forget them. They also called the righteous, and in French they call them les justes, the just people. Yeah. Ce soir l'ennemi connaîtra le prix du sang et des larmes. When my father took me to the man who put me in that burlap bag, I keep on remind me of the burlap bag and the barrel. At that time, when he knew that I was on my way to a safe place, then he joined the underground. The underground, in those days, they were called they were patriots. They were fighting the Germans. So he joined a group that was stationed outside of a city called Limoges. Also, not too far, nothing was far. France is a small country, and we lived We only stayed in that particular region, the center part of France. So he was in the near Limoges in a camp. He knew lots of his friends also had joined the underground and were fighting against the German in their own way. They were getting all of the armaments, all of their supplies was parachuted by the British, like almost like every night. They would get, you would see the parachutes actually falling down slowly, and that were actually carrying ammunition and weapons, food, clothing, all kinds of things that they would need, because they were actually staying in the tents. It was like a camping ground, you know. But they had so many of them. They were all over the place, fighting the Germans in their own way, derailing trains. That was one of their main objective. Anything that would slow down the march of the German, anything that would harass the German. And the Germans were actually afraid of them. They were very, very, very strong. There were so many of them. Patriots. Young people, some of them too young to fight, that never knew that they were going to have to fight. But they were placed in that position at that time, and they were courageous enough to do it. We're going to get rid of those. They call them les Boches. So many things to say. Oh, that was a big day. Oh, was it a big day? Or did we? Oh, my God. Even at my age, I think I had some champagne. And I think I even had a cigarette, if I'm not mistaken. Or cigar, I can't even tell you. Everybody was trying to imitate, not Charlie Chaplin, but Churchill, and have a cigar. Yeah, we were in a southern part of France, a small town called Miradou. And that's where my other sister was born, Liliane. And we heard, and keep in mind, at that time, how old was I? I was still a young kid. You know, I was still a young kid. I was about, 11 years old or something like that. But the Germans were still in France when the Allies invaded France, invaded Normandy. They slowly liberated, France, region by region, town by town. They were chasing after the German, and the Germans were on their road back home, more or less. They were scared, of course, but they did a lot of damage. They still had time to be ferocious, to be like animals, angry. They were doing, if I may say, they were raping women. They were stealing things. They were angry. They were mad. They had lost the war, but they were on their way back. In that small town of Miradou, there were also partisans. I told you the partisans, the members of the underground that were actually fighting against the German. And there was a camp that was located not too far. And I remember, only once, a small battle, more or less, between the German and the underground. We were inside the house. We were not too far from where they were actually fighting. My mother remembered that too, and I remembered it. I don't think my sister remembered that. She was a baby. It was awful. The Germans were defeated. I mean, that group of Germans, whoever they were. After that, the underground, what they did, that was terrible for a kid like my age to even view this. But they let us view it, and that's something that I don't tell the kids when I speak. At that time, what happened is this, and at the end of the war also, but what the underground did, they would pick up the women, for instance, who were collaborating or being kind or doing favors to the German women. Men who would actually also do business with the German, and they knew that. What they would do, they would pull them out, they would shave the women's head and disrobe them totally. They would be nude, and they would have those women and the men actually parade naked in front of the population. Some people would throw stones at them. Not too many, but still, that was pretty, pretty tough. I mean, scenes, like that I witnessed, and I'm sure that kids my age, younger, older, who were in concentration camp, probably, and I'm sure, saw things even worse than that, unfortunately. I've been telling my story, my experiences, for a very long time, over 20 years. Even before the museum, this museum was built. It used to be at the Jewish Community Center. And why do I do it? First of all, the main reason actually, so that I tell my story like so many thousands and tens of thousands people have done, telling the story. We want people to be aware of what happened. We don't want this to die. It should never die. It should stay alive. To keep that alive. If we keep that alive, we're leaving something that other people will remember, and hopefully this sort of thing will never happen again. My story is a very simple story. I have heard other people's stories, much more horrible than mine. They went through lots of things that I didn't have to go through. And because my mother, I was still protected. So why? It's a big question. I can go on and on. And sometimes, at the beginning when I started talking about it, speaking about it, I was choking. And I'm choking right now when I start talking about certain things. Can't help it. But at the beginning, I had to stop and I had to go out to find an excuse. I have to go to the bathroom, I couldn't talk. I couldn't speak about the experience of what I went through. Now it's much easier, what it should be after 20 years. We don't want that to die. We don't want that. Well, that's why we have this museum. That's why we have the thousands and thousands of pictures and films, and the film, and the people like Spielberg, sending, I don't know how many people he sent all over the United States, all over the world, to meet survivors of the Holocaust and have them and record their stories. There's libraries all over the country, in every single town, major city, where they have a museum. There are tapes. My tape, my small story, mini, not too much, but still part of it's like putting a place like a puzzle, putting things together.
How does that make you feel that you know that?
Well, it makes me feel good. I feel that I'm accomplishing something, that I'm contributing to something, that I'm not just letting that pass and say, keep in mind that, lots of people are not speaking about it because they can't. My mother never could. And I'm sure that she suffered more. I know. It's, can't forget that. It gives me a great deal of satisfaction to see those youngsters come in, with the schools, with their parents, and listen to me. And listen to other survivors. The trouble that we have right now is that there aren't too many of us anymore.